Good evening and welcome to the NUS Referendum Debate 2016, broadcasting live from Loughborough Students' Union tonight.
That's right, we're in Fusion this evening where you'll see members for both the Remain and Leave campaigns debate over what is best for our union, and LCR are here to guide you through this debate.
And no expense has been spared for tonight's broadcast. Over £400 has been spent on tech equipment, 60 chairs line up in Fusion ready for this broadcast, and we've got a whole set of panellists which are going to be guiding us through to tonight.
And you at home can get involved too using hashtag LSUNUS on Twitter. We'll be reading out your best thoughts throughout the show.
And referendums are all about your point of view, so we really want to hear from you. No view is more importantly than yours, so please get in touch.
The broadcast is about to begin, so please sit back, relax and get ready.
Good evening. Welcome to our live stream of today's...
So we're going to start off by listening to Rahul. He's going to be presenting and introducing the debate. And we're just going to be adding you that extra information, JT, aren't we? And kind of like helping you understand what's going on.
We are. We've got the facts, we've got the figures, and we've also got some banter as well, because LCR, that's what we do. That's what we do, isn't it?
I want you to kind of imagine it like watching it with your friends. That's how it should be tonight. So at times you'll get told to shush and we'll listen really carefully. And other times we'll just chat away and kind of talk over parts we don't think are important.
Campaign.
Should we see what Rahul is talking about?
Let's do it.
Student representative for the Leave campaign. She's also currently a member of the Ethnic Minority and LGBT Welfare Committees. Joining her will be Richard Brooks, the VP of Union Development and Deputy President of the NUS. His job is to go up and down the country to help the development of student unions all over the country.
So Rahul's just running through the panel at the moment. We've got two people who are on the Remain team and we've got two people who are on the Leave team.
I mean, so you started off by talking about like Richard Brooks. Richard Brooks is a really interesting one to watch. He's on the Remain team, but he's very open about the fact that the NUS can't stay the way it is.
He is.
Right, JT?
He knows that there are changes that need to be made within the NUS, and he's quite happy to admit that. But it'll be interesting to see what he has to say tonight.
And then, who else have we got?
We've got Paige Fontana, who's also on the Remain team. She's our student representative here from Loughborough. She's the one she's one of the people that's running the campaign here.
And I think, for this broadcast, they've made a real big effort, but they want it to be just as much a student thing. So you've got to remember that Loughborough Students' Union is totally independent about this, and it's about letting students have a chance to kind of say their points of view.
And we are also going to remain remain impartial this evening. Myself and Paul aren't going to have any opinions, so
now we're going to have a listen have a listen to the Leave. Should we go through the Leave people, and then we'll have a listen to what they talk about?
Let's do that.
Okay.
First up, we've got Gabriel Gatu, either or. He's the student in charge of the Leave campaign here at Loughborough, and he'll be talking about why he thinks that's the best idea.
And then we've got Will Fry, and he's been through an interesting story because he's involved with Lincoln, and I think we'll go on to that in a bit, but let's have a listen to the broadcast.
Paige.
Bring about change within university campuses.
Gabriel, obviously you're the key person on the Leave campaign. Do you think this is what the NUS does? Do you think it does it well?
Absolutely not. I think there's a clear misunderstanding. People assume that the NUS provide the 10% discount, but in fact it's actually uni days. So for the people out there, if we do leave the students out there, if we do leave the NUS, when we do leave the NUS, it won't affect our free cheeseburgers, so don't worry about it.
This is a prime part of what people are worried about. Cheeseburgers. That is one of the things they're really worried about.
But I mean, it's really concerning. We want to make sure that people don't lose the bigger picture, that people focus on cheeseburgers and they forget the other arguments that there could be.
You're not wrong, Paul. You're not wrong.
They're represented well.
No, definitely not. For example, Loughborough, as you may all well know, has got a very strong welfare and diversity scheme. So I feel without the NUS, we're strong enough to represent the minorities.
Paige, how would you come back to that?
Well, basically, I'd like to say that a lot of the welfare section at our university has been inspired by the support of NUS. So without NUS, we wouldn't have...
Welfare seems to be coming into this quite a lot, Paul. What do you reckon?
I mean, welfare is a really important thing, but you've also got to look at the backgrounds of some of the people here. Welfare is going to be their like kind of topic. I think certain people are going to push different areas, so it'll be interesting to see kind of like the areas which Brooks pushes in compared to others, which will look more like the welfare.
Talking about the welfare, we've got a lot of welfare committee involved. So we've got Charlie Dale, who is the current vice chair of welfare. She's very heavily on the Leave team. But however, on the Remain team, you've got Sophie Windsor, who is the LGBT chair next year. She thinks that the best thing is for us to remain within the NUS.
Well, I mean, some people question about whether like different groups have different benefits in terms of like some groups might actually be better off by joining the NUS and others they'll be better off leaving. Let's listen to
Richard.
NUS. The reason why the voting age was lowered in the 1970s from 21 to 18 was because of NUS. The reason why students don't pay council tax is because of NUS. So we do that, and we've done that really, really well. The second thing we do is support and defend and develop students' unions. So what we do there is we offer training, we offer support, we offer advice, we offer legal advice to students' unions, and have done that for Loughborough.
What we're looking out for here with Richard is a few hair flicks. He loves a good hair flick.
At the moment he's living that hand action.
Yes.
Watch every so often his hand just flicks off the table. There we go. One. Two.
I'm waiting for a hair flick. Let's see.
The money goes back into students' unions and saves students hundreds of £1,000s every single year. Our COLT deal alone saves students over £2 million in the last 18 months. That's a unique deal. You can't get that through uni days. But also through the purchasing consortium, we save students' unions money.
He mentions about unique deals, but I've got to say his hair's quite unique. Like, I can see why he flicks it. It just hangs just over his eye. That would really annoy me if I was him.
Thank you, Richard. Will, I want to come over to you as someone who's recently led a successful campaign to leave the NUS. What do you make to Richard's claim?
Yes, so like the question said about the 10% discount students seeing it as 10%. Is it really more than a 10% discount? I mean, I can't think of anything really on a major scale that the NUS has done in years that's benefited all its members. It's interesting that you said...
He's just given you a few.
I'll get a count of those as well. But it's interesting that you said about how the NUS claims to give students 7 million students voices, when only 1,000 of those actually get a voice when electing their officers. And
it's getting a bit awkward.
Itself
it's a bit awkward. He's getting a round of applause for that.
The members of their union.
So in the checkered shirt, this is Will, who is from Lincoln. He has obviously just led a successful campaign. Lincoln have left the NUS as of last week.
But I mean, one of the big problems is he might have led them to leave, but like we don't actually know how successful Lincoln are going to be. Are they going to cope well without the NUS? You have to bear that in mind.
You have to look at someone like Southampton. So they left in 2002. They've done very well on their own. They haven't needed the NUS, but they are a relatively they're a much smaller union than us.
And they're a very different situation. Like in terms of they haven't joined the whole bandwagon to leave. They have left on their own. Whereas right now, we'll go through the list in a minute, but there's a lot of universities which are going through this very similar discussion about whether they should stay or whether to leave.
There are.
Telling people that they're no longer oppressed when they may be feeling oppression and they no longer need representation. So.
Okay, thank you, Will.
Max Crawford leading the debate tonight. He's our VP Union Affairs here at Loughborough. He loves it.
And
look at him go.
You can see he's in his element. He loves to debate. And
he absolutely loves it.
You wouldn't want to mess with him. He seems quite like under control of the debate.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important that that balance is kept. He's going to have to fight hard to make sure that some very passionate people don't shout over each other like we're talking over Charlie right now.
But we have campaigns such as Play with Pride, Better Decisions, the Drugs Act, which was this year, none of which were influenced by the NUS and are actually trying to be adopted by the NUS now because of what we've done. So I think it's a bit of an invalid statement. And you said about the Ethnic Minorities Network.
So this is a good point from Charlie. She's pointing out that we actually have Play with Pride campaign, which is a very successful campaign across campus, whereas the NUS actually have their own campaign called Take a Stand, but we've never been involved in that campaign. What do you reckon to that?
Well, from what I've seen, Play with Pride's been pretty successful here. It's now on all sporting gear.
It's on every kit. It's fantastic.
And people know it. People wear wristbands. It's a well-known thing.
It is. It's what Paige has to say.
But to my knowledge, LGBT was the only association before the NUS affiliation. So the rest of the liberation groups have actually been influenced by the NUS, and we've sent liberation officers to the training who have come back and provided that valuable support that we don't get from Loughborough University. And so, yes, it is the case with ethnic minorities that it was influenced by the NUS. So, yes, we have successful campaigns here at Loughborough, and I'm not denying that. They are very successful. But would we even have these associations in the first place without NUS?
Do you think from a, obviously, like you said, they've created them,
I mean, I think it's also important to note that it's not the only campaign we do, Play with Pride. There is a range of campaigns, and I think sometimes there's a danger that we just look at one campaign. It's important to say, as an LSU, we do very well at looking at all of them. Like,
we've got Know the Line, Don't Cross It. We've got Better Decisions. We've got many more.
And
so many.
they're so well ingrained that not one stands out, and I think that's an important thing to note.
I think Play with Pride has had a really good impact on Loughborough, and I think that it is a solid point to say that we haven't taken an NUS campaign, we've made our own and made it very successful.
And I know that firsthand, identifying as 3 minority groups here at Loughborough, and personally without the NUS support, I don't know, I wouldn't feel comfortable being supported by the union alone. So.
It is interesting to see how much this debate will actually revolve around welfare. So our welfare section has been established for 3 years now. We're going into its 4th year next year, and it's really taken over.
It's
Loughborough.
growing incredibly well.
It's very well.
And it was like over elections, like that was one of the big hot topics, was actually who was going to be the next executive officer for welfare. And so I think it's definitely something which we actually do care about in terms of the union.
So here's Gabriel. Gabriel is on the Team Leave campaign. Let's see what he's got to say.
No longer part of the NUS. So it's a current trend that the top universities simply do not need the NUS.
Okay, thank you. Now, obviously, there's 2 arguments there: the success of the universities and making sure that students are represented. I want to take another question from the floor about that. I'd like to take one from AJ, if that's okay. We'll wait for the. Thanks, Charlie.
This isn't a question more as a rebuttal. I feel like it's not been fully explained how much the NUS and Black Students Campaign specifically were instrumental in forming ethnic minorities.
So this guy here was heavily involved in NUS's campaign for her exec officer, so he's also quite welfare.
Black Students Campaign, we wouldn't have an ethnic minorities network. I mean, I'm happy that right now that a lot of people think it's something that's been around forever, it's part of the furniture, but that wasn't always the case initially. Initially, when we started, it was a case of going to the Welfare and Diversity Executive Officer at that time, but they were unsure where to go.
So if we have a look at who's on each team from Loughborough University, so the Leave team, we've got some big names backing it. We've got Charlie Dale, we've got Johnny Flowers, Esther Malkinson from Societies is definitely backing the Leave team. We had a video come out today which has featured people such as Jessica Ginsberg, we've got Kieran Aspen in there. There's quite a lot of big names in this Leave team that are very passionate about leaving.
And they come from a variety of different areas. You've got from LGBT to societies to the sport, and I think that's quite interesting. Is actually you've got to remember the NUS affects so many different aspects of life, and it's nice to see quite a range of people here.
I agree. On the Remain team, you've got Sophie Windsor. She's going to be, like we said earlier, she's going to be the LGBT chair next year. So a thing to point out now is that the exec are remaining neutral in this debate. However, that's just professionally. Personally, off their personal Facebook accounts, Twitter accounts, they can choose a side, and Bryn Wilkes has chosen to stay with the Remain team. Obviously, aside from his professional job, it's personally, but we would like to point out at this stage that that's what he is supporting.
I think the groundwork the NUS has done has been so good and we're talking about times developing, that maybe we're at a stage now where the work that's been done identifying issues in a student community are now relative and are out in the open community, and that the support networks are there, and that we've got more and more charities that have been set up that can provide financial support, can provide various various networks of people in a wider community, and also as well that they can actually provide professionals and professional training and volunteering opportunities for these people and provide a link with the wider community.
So just to name a few of those you're talking about, liberation groups, we've got things like Trade, Stonewall, in the case of LGBT, and Public Policy Exchange, symposiums, in the case of women and ethnic minority students. Richard, in terms of keeping it directly to Loughborough students, can you tell us about NUS plans to make sure that the things they're doing is representative of Loughborough students here and moving forward that those organisations maybe can't offer?
Well, I think that the first thing to say about all of those organisations, that NUS works with all of them, because of course we do, because we play nationally. So when we talk about of course you get the advice and the support and the guidance and the collaboration with other different student groups up and down the country, and you will get all of that as a part of NUS.
John O'Tunnicliffe would like to point out that Richard Brooks is rocking the perfect mix between a surfer dude and a lumberjack right now.
The work we've done in terms
That's
of
quite an interesting way of looking at it.
skills and sexual harassment on campus.
I'm not too sure about like the shirt and t-shirt combination though.
I'm just not sure. It's not convincing.
I also have to ask why he's paying attention on his clothes and not the debate. Naughty.
I'll ask him.
One of the reasons why we always argue to remain a part of NUS, even if you don't necessarily agree with its direction or if it has flaws in your eyes or my eyes, frankly, is actually because you will always lose that national voice, and that for Loughborough students, the best thing for them is to be a part of a national movement, be in the room with government, be in the room with sector bodies to make those changes, because that's the only way you can.
And if we were to leave, if students voted to leave, would the NUS no longer offer those services to Loughborough Students' Union?
No, of course not. You've got to pay for what you have, right? But that would not be to say that we would never, if Loughborough students, if they did leave, wanted to come back, of course we'd welcome them back with open arms. But the amount of advice and support and collaboration of other groups, the ability to be in the room with government, campaigning nationally, you lose those things when you leave NUS. And
so for all those students who voted to remain but were maybe outspoken, are they completely shut off from NUS as well?
Well, I mean, the students here in Loughborough will ultimately decide whether or not Loughborough Students' Union remains or leaves. And if Loughborough Students' Union, as a majority and a core vote, decide to leave the National Youth Students, then you've left the National Youth Students, and we have to respect that, and we absolutely do.
Okay. Yeah, we'll come back on that if you would.
Just to kind of talk about national voice and things, like it's great that there is a platform for national voice, but is it being used in a relevant way? I mean, as far as I've been made aware of a motion that was submitted on the agenda for Black Students Conference, I don't know when it was or when it is, but I think motion 304, Black Students Conference resolves for a call for the abolition of prisons, and to campaign using a variety of tactics, including direct action. And I don't know whether that's something that is relevant to the students at Loughborough. It certainly wasn't in the terms of Lincoln, and the fact that the Loughborough students' affiliation fee is going towards motions like that being discussed.
Okay, Richard,
I'm not a black student. For reference, Black Students campaigns have.
So Richard Brooks, who's talking now,
bit
of background information on him. He's the first person in his family to go to university, and he said that without the Students' Union, he went to Hull basically, without the Students' Union there, he thinks he probably would have dropped out.
Because he's like been quoted in saying like the idea that like working class people often have been kept out, and actually that things have changed, and that now it's students' unions and it's what the NUS has done, which has helped make it more inclusive. And he's seen the effect on him, and I guess he wants to kind of pass on his experiences. But it's always really interesting to see people's background and see how that affects where they stand.
It is. Let's see what he's got to say.
The same way that if you wanted to at a national conference next year, you could submit policy to make something different, and that's your right. We are democratic and pluralistic. There will always be controversial views in that, but that's what we do.
It's an interesting thing as well, talking about the democracy and how many students from Loughborough, I suppose, engage with those policies. It's their right to do so, but seeing how many students vote in the NUS referendum, it wasn't very many last time. And whether that's a Loughborough thing or an NUS thing remains to be seen. I'd like to take another question from
I think it's just interesting to have a quick quote. We're just doing some research, and Richard Brooks is quoted in saying that HUUU is a stronger, more effective and more influential union on a national scale because of its NUS membership. NUS gives officers and staff training and support. NUS cultivates networks and hosts conferences and officers and specialist support by the bookload. He really is, whenever he speaks, so passionate about it. And I think, I know we focus on Richard Brooks, but just bear that in mind. I think to some people it really is, it's in their heart about this.
Yes. So Dane's just asked
that we can't already provide
what
ourselves.
Loughborough Students' Union gains from being in the NUS. Let's see what Paige has to say.
The support network that NUS offers, that things like welfare wouldn't exist. I'm going to keep coming back to welfare because I think that's
that we can't already provide ourselves. It's kind of that was now established. I understand the point you're making, but
yes. So the support behind that.
She's just said that we can't provide our own welfare. What do you reckon to that, Paul?
I think we can. I think you look at like the Students' Union and its power and its size and support by Loughborough University. It is possible we can supply it, but can it do it better than NUS can? That's what you have to ask.
You have to think, what do we go to for them, from them? What do they give to us? And are they just saying that they give us more than they do?
Yes, Loughborough has brilliant facilities and it's an amazing university, but where is the support for the minority groups? It's from the NUS. Fundamentally, that's where it comes from, that's where it stems from.
Can I ask you about the training itself that
I'm actually a bit in shock that she's saying this. She's almost discrediting our welfare section here at Loughborough, saying that it's all come straight from NUS and that none of it's done by Loughborough students.
How do you respond to that?
You've got to remember though that the people picked on these panels often will hold the strongest views. There'll be a lot of people, will sit in the middle, and they won't then be arguing the case. I think that's important to remember that these maybe are pushing the extremes of the cases.
It'll be interesting to see what some of the Loughborough Welfare Committee think of this. If you are listening, get involved. Tweet us with #LSUNUS, and we'll see what your thoughts are.
Specific training towards these things. I've never received it myself, being a member of Welfare and Diversity for 3 years, and I've never received it. So.
Okay, I want to take the second question just because it looks like there's a couple of people straight back on that. Charlie, if you just.
I did go to the NUS LGBT conference.
Yep.
And they had these things called caucuses there, which were basically where a group of minority students within the LGBT area would go and discuss issues that they face. I was the only delegate that went from Loughborough because of the price that the conference cost us, and we didn't have the budget for that.
Yep.
I wanted to attend the transgender conference, the transgender caucus, to try and understand the kind of issues that trans students would face in Loughborough. I was told I couldn't attend because I wasn't trans.
So this is Charlie Dale, who we were talking about earlier. She used to be chair of the LGBT society committee, and she's currently the vice chair.
What the definition of lesbian was, of who would be invited back to the caucus next year. So in terms of training, what I received from that weekend that I was there was very, very minimal. I came away with no resources.
There's an angry hand gone up in the audience. Did you see that, Paul?
We're very lucky in the studio. We've got multiple different camera shots, and I can see this hand.
I arrived there.
But there we go. You can now see it.
Hand.
There you go. There's the hand.
And as a direct quote from her, she said it was good for the socials.
Have you seen Richard
Flicker's
hair
yet?
yet?
Much from it.
Okay, thank you.
Have you seen Richard Flicker's hair yet?
I haven't, no. I'm a bit disappointed. I thought it might happen a bit more.
It was just too widespread to be relevant to Loughborough students. For example, with the gay male rep on committees, that's absolutely ridiculous to say that they're now a represented part of society, so they don't need representation anymore within LGBT.
As you can see, Charlie's very passionate about this.
Go on, Karen.
So I completely understand
and she
how that
clearly
can come
has
across
got
quite bad.
some experience in it. You can see that Charlie's talking from previous experience, which is always nice to see that Charlie's been through these different training courses and she's talking about what she's actually experienced.
I've known other people who have gone to LGBT conferences and taken away quite a lot, actually.
Who was that?
I just want to move this on. Can we take a question over here? Sorry, rather than having a dialogue between you two, it's great.
That's a classic example of my friend's been on a course and enjoys it.
And I attended the NUS conference this year. And loads of motions were mentioned regarding transgender students, and one of which was to implement transgender healthcare campaigns on every single campus, which is what I plan to implement next year. And I really want to focus on the gender identity, so maybe that wasn't there last year, but this year.
So again, we're still sitting on welfare topics here. It's interesting to see how much of the debate this takes up.
I can work with next year.
I think it's also one of those topics where you can keep on debating it. There's so much to talk about, and it means so much.
They provide support for every LGBT plus student, every BME, every women's, every black student here at Loughborough.
Thank you very much. Yes. I'd like to bring Gabriel. Obviously, we're talking about.
I think it's also really interesting to see who was debating there. You've kind of got the previous chair of the LGBT society, and then you've got next year. So they very much know each other. And it's quite interesting how they hold very different views, even though they're part of the same area.
It is.
Of course, I agree that it's important to have the minority groups' voices heard. The student experience has been running for 10 years. Loughborough has won.
So again, this is Gabriel who wants to leave the NUS.
The voice has been heard by everyone. All the different minorities are getting their opinions heard. Therefore, the NUS doesn't help us if students are able to talk to the people, execs, on a personal level and get their issues across. Therefore, we don't need the NUS to do that. People capable of doing that without the NUS.
I want to move on slightly. We talked a lot about ethnic minority groups and how well they represent them. I want to talk about other representation of the NUS as a whole, whether the NUS represents Loughborough students, because that's ultimately what they'll vote on. I want to talk about a wider representation on all Loughborough students. Will, do you have any opinion on that?
While Max talks about representation, it's important to talk about what this referendum's all about. And there's going to be three main options, isn't there, JT?
There is. So option one is that we stay in the NUS. That obviously means that everything will stay exactly how it's been for the past God, I don't even know how many years. A lot of years. A lot of years we've been in it. We have always been in it. So.
And then you've also got the option to abstain. Now I'm not exactly sure. So you don't need to vote. I'm not sure if you actually get the voting option as well. And then you can choose to leave. It's very simple. There's no option for reform. It's very much a stay or leave.
It is.
Maybe the majority don't agree with, whether it's for the right or wrong reasons. I know a lot of other universities that have a referendum have kind of spoken to their students about whether they even kind of know what does NUS stand for. And I know Newcastle's video, a lot of students didn't even know what the NUS was. And I think that the main argument that we made at Lincoln was that despite all the campaigning that goes on, and I think it was the...
it is an interesting point that a lot of students are aware of the NUS, but if you ask them what the NUS provide them, a lot of people will say a free cheeseburger, or they don't know.
The NUS card is what often people visualise in terms of what they think the NUS does. Like the whole kind of conferences they do and stuff is a very small percentage of people to understand and fully know what they can do.
Yeah. I had an NUS extra card throughout my time at college. It was, I mean, I didn't really need it. If I showed my college card, that got me the discount. I didn't ever. There was rarely a time where I had to show that exact card.
Like, I think I do have one, and we seem to have. We've lost sound.
We've lost a bit of sound for now.
But don't worry, we'll talk about NUS cards while we wait for the sound to hopefully come back to us.
I can't even remember how much they cost. Is it like a tenner or something? 12, maybe 15 with inflation. Who knows?
Yeah, but when I started, like people were like, you need an NUS card, and I think you don't. I don't think you necessarily need one. People often overplay it.
There we go, we've got one back. Let's see what they're talking about now.
What's your response?
And I think the way that NUS tries to do that, and I think does pretty well at doing, is by listening. And it's by listening to Loughborough, the student representative voice of Loughborough students. And it's by prioritising the thing that Loughborough students care about. And actually, if you look at the different things that students up and down the country are saying that are concerned, whether or not that's 9k tuition fees or anything else, actually it's student cost of living. Our priority campaign this year was cut the cost. It was about trying to stop the maintenance grants cuts that went through, and we did a really good job in terms of...
It'll be interesting to see whether the NUS do anything about... Have you seen the retrospective hikes on student loans? Have you seen anything about this, Paul?
Not fully.
Okay, so the government have said that they're going to go back and change the loan agreement that we all made 3 years ago. Anyone who was a student from 2012, their loan agreement is probably going to go up. So it's not good for us. We're going to end up paying more money, and it'll be interesting to see. He's talking about trying to save students money, whether they get involved in this and whether they tackle the government on why they are doing this change.
And are they in the position to make that change? Can they really challenge the government? That would be a really interesting question. But
exactly.
I think also just in terms of money, there's plenty to talk about in terms of NUS.
Clearly, as Richard said, they have done a lot of things that will benefit Loughborough students over the time. I don't know if you want to dispute that.
Yeah, no, it wasn't so much disputing that. It was the point that Richard just made about listening to students' concerns. Since Lincoln's disaffiliated, all we've heard from the NUS is that we've made a mistake and that our students are wrong and that it wasn't democratic and we need the one voice. At no point has anyone kind of sat down and gone, but why have you left? Why? What are the reasons? Why are you upset? It all seems to be, now is the time to be strong in unity. Now is the time to have one voice. It's not been... They were all down in Exeter campaigning, but no one that I'm aware of came and spoke to our students or campaigned to our students during our affiliation campaign, and that's the real point.
One, we didn't come and campaign with your students because your student didn't allow us to, and that's okay. Like, it's your student.
It's getting a little bit heated.
Please don't hold me to account for your students' rules.
I think it's always good though when there's
Number
real
two is that I've been
it.
speaking to your president-elect and trying to understand the concerns in which she has and other people have about
Richard Brooks is obviously just about to start his second year as the VP of... I think it is Union Development. That's the one.
I mean, that's a really critical position to be holding this year.
It is. It's fantastic to have him on the panel as well, that we've managed to get him here to Loughborough. He's obviously that passionate about us staying within the NUS.
You've got to remember, the NUS really want to campaign to keep people here. Like, they've been going around universities and they've actually been campaigning to keep people to stay. So they're like, both teams have been given a budget to campaign, and both teams are putting a lot of effort into both leaving and remaining.
Since he came in, they've negotiated council tax exemptions, they've changed the tenancy deposit schemes, and they've also changed 16 to 25 rail cards, which are some fantastic achievements for them. So they've done fantastic there.
but actually is actively speaking out against me and using words like my population in Birmingham University is actually, deemed a problem. So it's not I'm not being represented, I'm actually being actively outcast by the organisation that's meant to be representing me.
Okay. That's something that I'm sure will come up later in the debate today, so we'll pop back to that if you can. Going again on this representation and talking about national and issues and things like that, Gabriel, how easy do you think it is to get involved in some of the democracy that Richard talks about? As a Loughborough student, have you been able to voice your opinion on that?
Not all, no. Loughborough, as in students, have not had a chance in voting on the new NUS president who represents all the students.
This is another point that a lot of people come back to, is that at the NUS conference, the only people who can vote for the new NUS exec are the delegates who go from each university. A lot of people want it to be that every student across the UK can vote for this. What do you reckon to that, Paul?
Some of those who are critical would question whether the few delegates are trying to keep their power. And actually, if it's meant to be a national organisation, should everyone have a say? I mean, it's nice to see that at least this referendum, the student forum voted that the whole of the students would get a vote on this. Yeah. And it's always dangerous when it's a very small body of people which make decisions for a nation.
So when this idea of the referendum was taken to student forum, like Paul says, 100% of people at student forum voted for this referendum to take place, which really shows that the Loughborough students do care about every student having a voice.
And I know some of them in the room right now get to vote on policy, can get to vote on the direction of the national movement. It is a representative democracy. So that's kind of how that works. I think the thing I would say is that when I was first elected as Vice President Union Development of NUS, which was last year, one of the things I said was, and things I've been mandated to do, is to review the democracy of NUS, because whilst it is a representative democracy, there are a number of people who have raised legitimate concerns about how it works. Now, this year is the year in which we are doing that democratic review, and at National Conference 2017, so next year, we are going to bring a new democratic model to NUS, having consulted widely over this upcoming year. So my argument
who are you going to be consulting, just out of interest?
Everything from academics and wider sector people in terms of, because the democracy of NUS is difficult, right? There are
Max challenging Richard there, seeing if he's just pulling figures out of thin air, or whether this is legitimate stuff that they're doing.
Well, I think sometimes it's easy to he's saying he's going to speak to all these people. It'll be interesting to see will he actually make contact with them.
Given their opinion on how the conference works.
No, we've already done a fair amount of that already. I think one of the things we will absolutely be doing is just doing an open consultation, and that's going to every single person, what do you think? And I'm very happy for that to happen, to be honest.
Malia, the new NUS president, has actually tweeted saying that she's tweeted the link to watch this, so she must be watching. She has also tweeted saying that she's a big fan of the Yes to NUS video that Loughborough have made, so she's really hoping that we don't vote to leave.
Very quickly, Will, so what do you think about that
really nice
the national conference,
such a
how it
platform
works?
which people can discuss things, and it'll be nice to see everyone's point of view here today.
It is.
An organisation that prides itself on inclusion, and I think
and don't forget to use the hashtag. JT, what's the hashtag?
The hashtag is LSU NUS. We've had some tweets come in. Ellie McLeod has said that as someone who's also been to the LGBT conference, she found it incredibly helpful and inspiring. So it would seem that she would like to remain in the NUS by that comment, I'd say.
Setting up a committee to scrutinise officers.
It'll be interesting to see how many people at the moment are kind of undecided, because there'll be a lot of people that may agree and disagree with different aspects, but the overall weighting, that's the hard one.
Kind of goes on about being a safe space and being respectful of each other, and then you've got NUS officers standing on stage saying,
Axel has said that the NUS is meant to be a union for students, so why has nothing been done about the increasing tuition fees for all students? It's a good point.
It is a really good point, especially as the NUS start tackling far bigger political things. If they start saying their views on on global issues, you have to question why are they not getting involved with student finances.
It seems that there's a lot of times that people
and John Acko has asked, is there an alternative place for us to get help and support if we do leave the NUS? So, yeah, again, probably going back to welfare and general support of our union executive.
It's important to say that not all supports welfare, though. Education hasn't maybe been mentioned as much as it should. Educational support, mentoring, all that kind of element.
Do you want to take a question from the front, and then we'll take one more from Twitter, and then we'll wrap that up?
So I'm a student representative within our athletic union, and I have to represent our clubs within the university itself, and I make sure I keep in constant contact.
So this is Johnny Flowers, he's part of the AU exec, like he says.
and I do that as often as I can. Could you please tell me why not one leader of the Liberation campaigns makes regular visits to Loughborough? And you claim to be really passionate about these campaigns, but within the last 18 months, no one came. And on top of that, how can you claim to stand up for our students, which you don't seem to actually take
read it off his phone? It's something he's been working on this
He's
question.
got facts and figures. Facts and figures.
If you've got your remotes, you remember you've got your A, B, and C. Someone will probably remind me about Remain being A, Leave being B, and then if you're not bothered or not
so
sure.
what they're going to do is they're now going to do what we do in like lectures often. We're going to be doing some interactive polling.
And let us know how you feel.
So Max has handed out polls to every single person, and they'll be able to vote.
Have you got
on
any
this.
tweets for us so far?
Yeah, so sticking with representation, a lot of discussion.
Tweets? We've got plenty of tweets.
Yep,
we love a good
tweet. We've been following the tweets.
There's been quite a lot of tweets actually. It's going well. Let's have a look. We've got some new ones coming. We've got Lizzie Beale has said that she agrees with the Lincoln rep. As a delegate of NUS 2016, it was far too politicised.
What's been talked about, the representation of students. The next
I have
question
heard
is
that
from
as well.
Ria Shah. Have we got Ria Shah?
Here we go. Let's hear this question now.
Thank you. Do you want to read out your question for us? Can we get a mic to her? Thank you.
On average, how much money has the NUS saved, like individual students? Like on average, do you know?
Okay, this is.
So on average, how much money has the NUS saved, like through these discounts and stuff?
Yeah.
The individual student, has it actually made a difference, or?
So just to summarise that, a lot of about what students want to know is and how much money will it save us, what can we spend the money on. Just for the purposes of all students out there, the subscription, the fee is £43,704 that we pay in the year, and it's possible it rise a little bit. We spend about £2,000 on NUS democratic events that we go to, which we receive some money for, and £5,000 in hybrid training networking, which obviously we get things back for. Richard, we'll go to you talking about the fees.
I'll talk about individual students and then student unions. So for individual students, through things like the NUS Extra Card, which, like I said, has got a lot of exclusive deals, it saves students close to £100.
Back to student discounts, classic.
And there's going to be a lot of numbers kind of thrown around now, and it's going to be very hard to always make sense of all these numbers, because I've got paperwork in front of me, and there's so many different figures, and depending on how you play the numbers, some people are saying you'll save money by leaving the NUS, others say you won't save money. It's quite an interesting one.
It is.
Purchasing consortium, as I mentioned before, block buying things through sales in the NUS Extra Card, so £3 million every single year goes back into.
And it's very big, large amounts of money, like £3 million from selling those cards.
And through like purchasing consortium is where you have things like cheaper drinks and food and products and services.
Cheaper drinks is another talking point. So
number on how much you
being
would save
part
students in general, but I think it's fair to say it is a significant amount of money.
Okay, so Gabriel, off the basis of it, I'll come to you. That sounds like a lot of saving that students are making, being beneficial, going back into the student experience. Do you agree with that?
No. Obviously not.
I thought you might.
Obviously not. Yeah. I don't think there's been arguments within welfare themselves about the costs. These costs are just simply not justified. We're not getting enough of a return from them. Loughborough, as a union, as a university, is strong enough. This money can be spent elsewhere for better reasoning. So, I disagree with that. Yeah.
Okay, I'll go to the audience. We've got one at the back. Have we got a microphone?
So it costs us around £45,000 to affiliate to the NUS each year. And
yeah, so
it's
a couple
hard
of
to
things.
put that,
Firstly, just to reiterate,
put that
that's
number
49,000. Was that max 49,000?
You know, is that a lot of money compared to what we spend, or is it not a lot of money? We don't really know at this stage.
Fees for events and things like that.
About 2,000 and 5,000, right? So yeah, okay, roughly £50,000 currently being spent on the NUS.
VP
Interesting
Sport,
what you said about the NUS Group, Richard. Particularly having sat on the board of trustees myself this year, looking through the financial accounts. Obviously, we're one of the unions that particularly props up the NUS in terms of our commercial outlay. We're by far and away the highest purchaser in terms of alcohol provision. Actually, what's been absolutely, and what's been suggested is we could potentially do it much cheaper for our students going alone. I know Lincoln in particular, from what Will was telling me earlier, they think the top 10 most purchased alcohol products from their students' union they could find cheaper buying themselves. Obviously, we could also set up our own buying groups outside of NUS. We still actually
Luke seems to have done some serious research here in the old drink debate.
Because you don't have to be a member
it's always nice though to base it on facts.
So
it is.
The option.
Our belief is that I sort of think it's fully understood what I mean the loss or gain would make though.
Cheaper for our students. So the question on what benefit does it directly have for our students? well, we would be able to offer cheaper drinks every single night that they go out. Which
It is an
obviously saves
interesting
money.
point as well to point out that
we reinvest that into
the
student
universities'
experiences. So actually, for
bars on campus, so Village Park Bar, they actually have cheaper pints than our union, and they're obviously not going through the NUS for their alcohol. So there obviously is a way for us to get it cheaper.
And what's interesting is they're run by another company, and that company will make a profit, yet they still offer it cheaper. And the whole union's meant to be making money for us.
Let's see what Richard has to say on this.
Big 43/50k number is a big round number, and I always find it to be a bit of a red herring because we have seen in every single students' union where we've done membership benefit statements for every single students' union, pretty much there is a net benefit. So in terms of purchasing consortium through NUS Extra Card, through all of the services and offers we provide, because it's not just about the things you buy through the bar, but things like legal advice, things like training, things like support, those things are subsidised by NUS.
So to try and put some of these financial figures into kind of perspective, it's interesting to look at like Lincoln and what Lincoln's going to gain or lose from their independence. So, like some people will say that they'll save money and they'll gain money. So, for example, like there might be a total of £153,000 of loss from different deals and stuff, but you've got to put that against the cost they pay per year to be affiliated. And well, I mean, these numbers though, like how can they predict how much they're going to lose to the pound when people say that they're going to lose this much in savings from purchasing deals? That's very hard to predict going forward to next year.
Yeah, definitely.
As well, but I do think it's an important one.
Thank you very much. Remember as well, if you haven't already voted on your buttons, remember to
I'm hoping they're going to show us some of these vote results soon. Do we get to see? Is that a thing?
They put a lot of effort into them, and I'll be really excited. Like people get really excited when they see these live graphs. And I'm interested to see what the perspective and the balance of the people in the room is. And don't forget to tell us what you think as well. You can use the hashtag.
Some are great that the NUS does, saying draft beer and soft drinks. Some would we be able to match or improve on. A significant factor to consider is that there's someone at the NUS working to get these deals for us. We'd then probably have to pay a member of staff between £20,000 or £30,000 to get that staff to work on those deals for us. So there is also some cost that we'd have to pay to a new member of staff. But in terms of the trading that we've got, the offsets are pretty much minimal. We go through another question. There were some hands up there. Yep, if we'd like to go.
So overall, would you be able to just simply answer in terms of money coming in and coming out, will Loughborough save money by leaving the NUS? Because you were saying before that we've got to think of more of the students, so what you're basically saying is we're subsidising other universities. We're not talking about the NUS, about the other universities, we're talking about whether we want to stay. If we're looking for our own benefit, technically you are saying that we will save money, which can then mean we can invest more into other things. Or are you saying that if we leave, it's going to cost us more money?
I want to say as well, I just want to say as well, obviously the cost thing as well we've got to think about is not...
So if we can develop on Max's point, it's the kind of idea that while you can often take the figures originally and say we might save money, there's also like administrative costs and cost of staff which people often don't take into account, and it's really important to take into account the complexities of these numbers.
I think that comes back to the training representation again, whether it's good enough, whether we'd be better, which
it is easy to say that, yes, the NUS do it for us and we could do it better, but you've got to think we're going to have to put the time and the money into doing it better ourselves.
Financially, you would.
And do we want to reinvent the wheel? Like that also comes to question. If we offer the same.
So, in terms of my point, it does directly benefit Loughborough University Students' Union by remaining a member of NUS. Every single students' union officer in the country keeps talking about the big affiliation fee figure. What I keep saying over and over again is the savings to the purchasing consortium, the money you get back in NUS Extra Cards, the subsidised cost in all of the things and training support that you have would cost you more money if you left. So you would not benefit financially from leaving NUS. Hopefully that's been clear.
Okay, thank you.
So, an observation that I'd like to make is that you can talk about beer money if you want, but as a national body, did you say that the NUS had negotiated for students not to pay council tax in the past? Yeah, but that's an example. It's an example of, as a national body, and looking at tuition fees, without a large national union fighting on our behalf, that's going to go out of control. So you can talk about your weekly beer money, or you can talk about thousands of pounds being, at risk by not being a national body.
Thank you. I think we'll go directly back to that from a
So
point
the
of
way he
question
says
over
weekly
there.
beer money here could be thousands and thousands of pounds. Like alcohol, is, especially over freshers, alcohol is not a small amount of money for this Loughborough Students' Union.
That's true.
With
That's what
regard
Johnny's
to
saying.
saying the NUS is fighting for students, did the NUS not give up fighting the raising tuition fees in exchange for some small victories? Because that is something that was released in the press a while ago, and if it's completely untrue, why did the NUS
Again,
not
Johnny Flowers knows his stuff.
write in it and get those statements retracted if they were untrue?
Okay, Will, I'd like you to maybe answer. I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
I'd just go back to my point that I think that in terms of we're talking about Loughborough students again, and obviously coming from Lincoln, it's not my kind of area, but in terms of directly to students from the Lincoln side of things, that Richard raising about saving money. I've been at university for 3 years and never had an NUS card, never paid for an NUS card, but I've been able to get the same discounts because students are kind of viewed as a group now anyway. I don't think we need the NUS representation to be seen as a wider group of people. And I think that if things did, like important issues did come about, like council tax, if the government tried to start charging students council tax again, then the students would rise up against it. It's not that we need to have all this.
I think it might be interesting at this point just to read a quick quote from Megan, the current standing president, on the perspectives, on like the prospect of tuition fee increases. They say we strongly oppose any further rise to already extortionate tuition fees, particularly if they are linked to a teaching excellence framework, and we believe new providers must meet strict requirements so students aren't ripped off. That's what they say.
That's interesting.
But that's all they've said. It'll be interesting to see whether they carry this on with action or not.
And it'll be interesting to see whether Richard says anything about it this evening.
We wouldn't, because you've said we're non-political. We need to stay in the NUS because we need to be political. We need to challenge the fact. No. We need to challenge the fact that the agreement we made to pay £9,000 is being.
I mean, it's very difficult though for Richard to keep an eye on all these different conversations. There's so much knowledge you need. Is it fair to say that maybe even that the student representatives might be struggling slightly?
I definitely think that you'll definitely see Will and Richard talking a lot more than our student representatives.
And I appreciate what you're saying.
What Will's
Sorry
got
if
to
this
say.
caused any confusion. My argument is that we're at conference. It's a very sort of Labour supporting left-wing feel about it, and that's when we're having a massive go at the Conservatives for the tuition fees and cuts that they've introduced on us. But was it not Labour in the first place that introduced the tuition fees? And if we do support this Labour government and get the Labour government back in, and we don't get the free tuition, are the NUS just going to almost sell out students again for more small victories? Is the point that I was just trying to make about it.
Okay, Paige, let's bring you in.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say
The politics begin.
In terms of whether you're Labour or Conservative, I think it's irrelevant. If you don't agree with the rise in tuition fees, why would you not be in a national body where you can perhaps change that in the future, especially with the talks of grants and loans already have been tuition fees have already been increased. Why would we not want to be part of that national voice where we can perhaps change that in the future? If you're not happy about it, we're not going to change it as an individual.
Shout out to James Jones, who has said, is that Richard guy going to a hoedown at Brooklyn Bar tonight or something? Strong from you, James.
Have we got any tweets from Rahul to bring in now?
So we've got one from Rosie McKenna. Without a national body to lobby on national campaigns...
Don't forget, we also mention your tweets. You can get exclusively mentioned by us if you just tweet in, because we'd love to hear from you.
How do you respond to that?
And I think...
Sorry.
We'll have a listen to the next
without a
question.
national body to lobby on national campaigns or on national issues for students, our voices will be weaker.
We don't need the NUS to communicate to other universities. Alone, we've got Will here from Lincoln. We communicated to get him here without the help of the NUS. So we're capable of communicating with other universities to unite to combat that.
Okay. Paige, do you want to come directly back to that?
Yeah, it's one thing getting Will from Lincoln, and I'm happy that you're here to take part in this debate. But it's another thing communicating with a whole another union. Like, we can bring people in, the odd person, but communicating on a level with other unions around the country is sort of like quite difficult to manage if you're just one union.
Okay, thank you. I just want to find out if we've got room for one more question. Have we got time for one more quick question, if you tell me my... Okay, if we want to go to the third question
Timekeeper is called in.
Response from each panel member. John, if you want to give your question.
So yeah, it's a careful balance of timings, like they've got a certain procedure, but we'll have a quick listen to the question.
Is it sensible to disaffiliate and have this discussion on the basis of who the next NUS president is going to be?
I thought this might come up.
Do you think this might come up? Line on each of that from you guys. Will, do you want to respond?
The disaffiliation campaign in Lincoln was completely kind of, it wasn't to do with the new president, and actually I think it's wrong the way that she's been attacked in the media. Yes, she made some comments, rightly or wrongly, and those comments have been used, and people feel certain ways about them, but to attack someone personally is not right.
So just to keep you in the loop, at the NUS conference, obviously a new NUS president was elected. That is Malia Bhutia.
Voting yes, whether or not we rejoin again in the future in Lincoln's a different story, but voting yes now is essentially, in our eyes, telling NUS we're happy with how we're being represented.
There's been a bit of controversy with her where she's made a few comments before the conference, and they've been completely spun out by the press, as a lot of things do, and it's led to a lot of people saying they're going to have this referendum. Whether that's linked or not, people aren't sure, but it has come after the conference where she was elected.
And it's really important to stress over these happened before she was elected. Like, because they've came out now that she's president, they're far more significant. But, I mean, maybe we should bear them in mind, maybe we shouldn't, but the news has definitely put them into people's perspective, and maybe NUS's image has been changed because of it.
Definitely. Let's see what Paige from the Remain campaign has got to say.
A vote during executive elections, and the majority of students did want to stay in. So in light of the election of the new president, it seems that this has all kind of come about, and fair enough, students have their concerns, but why would we leave a national body where we can be represented, we can have a national voice, we can communicate with other unions over one person who... Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We'll go there and there very quickly just about this recent election. That's fine. So Will's got to leave. He's got to get a taxi. That's fine. Thank you very much. If you go in the corner, someone will
all right,
grab
I see how it is.
Yep.
He's leaving. See what I did there?
Yeah,
he's leaving.
that's quite a good one.
He's so on the campaign that he's leaving now.
It'll be interesting to see how this upsets the debate and whether, like, now suddenly the other side will have more say.
Will's definitely been the most vocal person for the Leave campaign, so it'll be interesting to see how Gabriel takes over.
But hopefully Max and the audience will keep him in check.
Let's have a look. Which even Rich said in a SPAN conference, and you mentioned on what the NUS is already a broken system. What her comments only ignited issues which have already been there for a long time. Our members have been coming back from conferences consistently, not knowing why they went there, they've not gained anything from it. What her comments just brought more attention to the fact, and it's not the main reason why we're leaving. It's the second time it's been mentioned today. It's got no relevance.
Okay, well, following on, if you want to give your closing statement, then we'll get Paige to do hers as well, representing both sides. And remember to vote on the little...
I think the closing statements are always really significant. These are what people remember.
Gabriel.
Right. Loughborough University, have you got a question?
No, we'll go, unfortunately we've run out of time. We're just going straight to the closing statement.
A closing statement here from the Leave campaign. Let's see what he's got to say for himself.
He didn't want to address it just then, and your representation.
Do you think he looks slightly nervous or not?
He does. I think he would have really preferred it if Will was here to help him with this one.
Closing statement.
He's getting his phone out.
Yep. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are presented our case for leaving the NUS, an organisation that fails to represent our students and instead drives their political agenda. An organisation that subsidises the cost of alcohol to other student unions by charging them as more than we would pay if we were alone. Affiliation costs are too much. On this historic day, as Loughborough was voted ranked 4th in the country of best university in the UK, with a leading student union recognised as a leading provider of student experience in the country, let's make sure that we secure tomorrow and continue to hold our future in our own hands. Thank you.
So there we go, that's the closing statement from the Leave campaign.
It's nice to see the other side clapping as well. It's always nice, good sportsmanship.
Yep, so
and here's the Remain
I encourage
campaign.
all Loughborough students to think about the whole student body, not just the majority. If you feel that we need representation, then let's represent everybody. Let's represent the ethnic minorities. Let's represent the LGBT students. Let's represent the disabled students. Let's represent all the people that might be underrepresented here. I feel that the only way that we can do this is by remaining affiliated with the NUS. Talking about costs, can we really put a price on equality? That's up to you. And I think that we should remain to make sure that we can implement change. If we want change, then let's remain and help that change come about.
So there we go. Final statement from the Remain campaign. Again, quite a good round of applause there.
Sorry to those of you who didn't get to say what you wanted to say. Obviously, we had a very tight time. There's lots to talk about, and I'm sure the debate will continue over the next few days. Rahul, do you want to summarise for us?
Yes.
And
good old Rahul. We love Rahul.
As Max said, unfortunately, that's all we have time for. Thank you very much.
So there we go.
Panelists.
That
Thank
was
you very much for Max,
our
chair.
alternative
Thank you
commentary
to the
of the
audience.
NUS debate. Thanks for tweeting in.
Thank you for watching it. I think we should very quickly just stress though what happens next.
We
So,
should.
When's
That's
voting,
true.
JT?
Voting is on Thursday and Friday, so you can head to the LSU website where you'll be able to vote whether you want to remain, leave, or whether you want to abstain from the vote. But if you go to the website, you're probably not going to abstain, are you?
And I think what's really interesting is then we've got to make sure that 4,000 people hit that vote. That's going to be really significant hitting quorum.
If we do not hit 4,000 votes, the decision goes to the Board of Trustees, who, it's not confirmed, but they probably will decide upon the majority of the votes. So if we've got 65% that want to stay, that's probably what we'll do.
But there's still like a chance for change, so we're really excited about what to happen. Don't forget you can follow us all using the hashtag, stay involved, don't forget to vote. This has been Loughborough Campus Radio. I've been Paul Johnston.
I've been JT.
Thank you for watching and listening.